It's all there. Maps, passcodes, phony IDs to get you past the front gates. But that's not what's most important.
What is this for?
Hey there, Luke. First, I want to congratulate you for winning the 11-second club. That is quite an accomplishment and really impressive. So my name is Robyne Powell. I've been working as an animator for about 30 years. So I've spent a number of years working at Blue Sky Studios and then quite a bit with DreamWorks, and then just recently on a stint, I was just working with Disney, wrapping up Zootopia 2. So I was given the opportunity to give you feedback on your shot, which first and foremost, when I first looked at it, I thought that was amazing. It was really, really entertaining and very, very clearly read. So I thought you did a fantastic job on it, obviously, and that's why you won the contest. So let's just take a quick look. So you've got these great shots here with this, with two characters, and then with that really nice hookup going into this one, but that is really funny, really, really funny action. And then, of course, ending the shot in there. So I'm going to go over a few things, just as some suggestions on how you can kind of push a little bit further. So what I was kind of looking at first, I really thought this was really nicely, easily read. Something that not a lot of people realize, to do is that when you want to focus on a particular action, like this guy over here, you want to keep this guy over here kind of subtle because you don't want it to compete, right? So anytime that you've got something that is of equivalent size or action or whatnot can really draw the viewer's eye away from that. And you didn't do that, which is awesome. And you've also made a point of making these poses very, very clearly read. So you've got this great silhouette, like for example, here hitting these poses, you've got all this great negative space and this clear view looking at the folder. But this guy, I was watching him too, just his really, really subtle acting, which I thought was beautiful. So there's some other things too going through. Let's just take a look at these other areas. Yeah, see, look at how clear those silhouettes are. And like I said, this hookup action is really nice that you did it over the cut because it really flows really well. And then going into this, I just think that's really funny. His expression is awesome. I love that. And then going into this here. So some suggestions that I have on some things that you can do to start pushing stuff a little bit further is to start breaking up a little bit more how things kind of start and stop all at the same time. So you have done a pretty good job with having this really nice overlap. It would be great to kind of push things a little bit further. So for example, even on this action right here, and let's just take a look here. So we're looking at this guy right here. So when I'm looking at his, I'm just gonna, sorry, we're gonna drag over here. Okay, so when he comes up, you see how he's coming up to this apex, but the hand's coming up, the folder's coming up at the same time as well. And then when he comes down into here, it's boom, like everything kind of comes down all at once like that and hits that pose. And it's the same here on this guy back here is when we notice that he will, let's see his head and his body all come up and stop at the same time. And when he's doing things like this, his head and his expression kind of drop at the same time. So the same concept as far as keeping one of the characters in the background a little bit more subtle so that we can really focus on the main character. If there's something on a character like this that you really want to emphasize, like his expression, you don't want the rest of the body competing with it. So he's got this great expression that you go into where he drops into that kind of let's see here. Let's take a look at this. So where he does that, where he goes into that, look, but his whole body starts and stops at the same time right in there. So it might be nice to kind of overlap those a little bit, like maybe he comes down and he's easing into it, and then you sort of hit that pose like, wait, what? So then you can really focus on those kinds of things. Then there's some areas in here too, where let's just take a look. So some stuff that we are, like in here, I'm going to talk about this guy, the main guy here that's talking. So when he is dropping the card into the folder, you see how all of the body's moving and all of the head and things like that. It might be nice to kind of break that up a little bit more. So maybe if we're focused on like what's the main intent there is to really see this thing kind of land, is maybe to keep the other areas a little bit more subtle so we don't feel necessarily like big movements in the body or the head or anything like that, and you just feel this like boom and then go into it. It doesn't mean like separating those actions completely, because of course with proper body mechanics we want to make sure that we do have different things connected. So if that hand action is coming down and we're really kind of emphasizing, yeah, you're going to want to feel a little bit there in the chest. And then of course maybe a little overlap in the head as well. But what you might be able to do is, let's just see right in here. You see how the card is coming down and the head is coming down at the same time, right in there. So maybe we can just kind of lead with the head a little bit. So as he's like this, maybe the head starts to come down and then he slaps it down. So just as the head's finishing that turn, the card is coming down like this. So it gives you a chance to follow what the head is doing, and then you know exactly what's coming next is that card. So you're overlapping those two actions, but they're not happening at the same time. So that might be kind of cool to do. Now, a few things too that you can look for with little polish stuff is track everything. So this is where animation kind of redefines the term perfectionism. But what I'll do if I'm doing something for polish, so for example, we're going to just focus on this guy right here, is I will scrub back and forth and back and forth, and what I'll do is I will look at every part, but just study one part at first. So I will look at things like, right now, let's say the head and the eyes, you know, the head and like the eyebrows right in here. And I'll find those areas where I can just emphasize a little bit more of an arc, maybe just a tiny little bit of an antic coming up before he drops into that, so you get that extra little bit of weight, or maybe a tiny little bit of drag on the side of the head or something. So I can find those areas. And then I'm also looking, once I scrub through the whole section or whatnot, I'll go through and I'll look at, say, this hand. And then I'll say, okay, see how this hand comes down here with the chest at the same time, but the fist is pretty stationary, so maybe I might get a little bit of overlap there. So I'm exaggerating here because you don't want things to all be really, you know, wibbly and all that sort of thing, but you might get something with a little bit of overlap on that wrist. And then let's see, so let's talk about right in here. So even following stuff like this as that hand is dropping, see how it goes at a diagonal? So you can track stuff like that and figure what's a way that I can maybe just arc it a little bit, maybe overlap the wrist a little bit so he snaps that card down. So it doesn't feel like he's going straight, but instead just a tiny bit of an arc. And then you can smack that card into the folder, which you've got right in there. And then I look for areas where, as far as polish, where can we kind of emphasize that weight and that timing and spacing just a little bit more to kind of push it? So I often tell students that although we shoot our video reference and we're studying that, and obviously it's real life because it's our video reference, right? We have the ability and really the obligation to go in there and find those areas where we can kind of push a little bit further, where we can plus stuff. So as you know, I mean, we're looking at poses where maybe we need to rotate them a little more 3/4 or pull that arm out, get a little bit more of a silhouette or clear out some negative space or something, but it's also like emphasizing the curve. But what I love doing, polish is one of my favorite things to do, is I look for those areas where I can start to just push the timing and spacing a little bit more to give it a little bit more weight, a little bit more snap. So even on things like this folder here where it's coming down, I love that you've got this snap coming down and then the folder closes. So maybe you can have the folder like snap a little bit faster and just feel that sense of weight, but we get a chance to read it close because right now it's closing as it drops. So it hasn't fully closed at this point, but maybe it can go snap just as it's starting to drop out of frame. I think that would be really, really nice, is add those little bit of flares and those sorts of things. Now on this turn in here, so as I was talking about as far as starting and stopping things at the same time, see how even when we come up in here, the head and the chest and the arms and everything else sort of hit this pose at the same time. So what might be nice is, you see how you've got your arms up here, is maybe hit that pose and those arms just drop like a couple, 2 frames afterwards and snap down. So you get a chance to read the body, but this sort of adds that extra little punch at the very end. Now you can actually have things stop at the same time, or at least like within a frame or something like that. But where we can emphasize that more is maybe something is easing out of its position, like for example the arms. If you're at a position where it's up here and the body is coming up and they both do this and hit the pose at the same time, what you can do is maybe ease out of those hands a little bit longer. So then you have more of a contrast between those ease out poses in here and then faster, and it hits the pose at the same time as the body, but you've offset them just in their timing and spacing. So you might start at the same time and end at the same time, but that in-between section in there is where you can kind of offset that. So maybe the body gets there a little bit sooner and maybe a little faster at the beginning and say eases into the final pose, but the arms ease out of their start position, travel a little faster, and then hit the final pose. Or maybe even the hands have a bit of an overshoot or something like that. So you're sort of living within that pose, but it helps break those kinds of things up. So now let's move forward and let's take a look So this was an area right in here that I thought this was really funny. I love this look and this attitude going into it. But something that I think you might want to try is, you see how the arms are straight down like this, and you've got the whole body and the attitude and everything else, which is fantastic. Now he turns and he starts to go into this move, but you see how the arms start coming up as well. So we're getting like a total body shift, or a body shape change in there. But remember, when we're talking about things that are moving in the screen, I love this face, and I would love to be able to read the face a little bit more, like emphasize a tiny bit more. So I was going to suggest something, just something that you might want to think about, is what if you held the arms back a little bit longer? So it doesn't mean hold them exactly in that pose, because obviously they're going to be reacting to the body turning and whatnot. But like, for example, this arm, this hand right here. So let's go back to this one. So this is where the hand is, right? So what if the hand was here and it's just starting to peel off that desk? So it's still behind him like this. And then this arm, because we've got it here, what if it was still like this? So we're starting to lead in with the head and the body, and then the arms can swing through into this. Now this is the other area that I thought was really, it's really funny. I love how he brings this up, but look at how the arms are coming up and the body's coming up at the same time. So if you delayed the arms a little bit, started to lead with the body, so the viewer's like, what's going on? Like, he's starting to do this and he's going into this move, and then the arms can go through a little bit like a swoosh through here. So the body's already in this, or this expression, and already starting to come up to this pose here, but the arms are still just off screen, like they're starting to swoop underneath him here, and then they come up a little faster up into this. So you feel this. That way you'll get a chance to read what's happening with the face and still be going like, I don't know what's going on, like what is he doing? And then the hands come up, and then you get a chance to just register that he's got these glasses in his hand, because right now it's the face and the hands coming at the same time, and they're both really funny actions. I would love to be able to kind of focus on one a little bit, overlap into the second one, so now the viewer's focus can now take in that he's got these glasses coming up, which I thought would be, kind of a nice little flair to have it. Now when he goes into, let's just see here. So when he goes into this action right in here, what I would do as far as polish is just watch out for anything that follows kind of a diagonal. So you see when his glasses come in, it's very, very linear, so maybe get a little bit of weight, even a little bit of overlap. If you want still the gag to be like something going in just straight in like that, you can still add that nice little organic arc, just follow a little bit of maybe a dip, like a weight, or maybe it's coming up and over or something, but a little drag on those glasses as well. And then when he goes into his face, this is something I was noticing, and I was thinking like, what is it that I was kind of responding to when I first saw it? It's this. See how this guy's reaction, he's leaning back and he's like, like this, and then as the glasses are coming up, he starts to move himself forward and connect with the glasses. So you see, watch when we get right to here. So you see how it just fits, like everything just slides in and clicks, right? So maybe we can find a way to still keep that really, really organic. Like, what if he were to hold that expression? Now this would probably end up adding a couple frames in here, more than a couple of frames actually, but what if he were to keep this expression of being what he's got right here, where he's like, yeah, like I don't know what this is, and what if that guy puts the glasses on, but then even does a little like wedges them on his face or something like that, and you can feel his face like do that, and then he opens his eyes, so you can see like, oh, like what is that? So it doesn't necessarily feel like it was sort of a puzzle piece that just clicks and slides onto his face. So you can play around with stuff like that too. It's just add that little extra flair just right there on the end. So some of the areas where you can look for a polish too is on things like this, like whenever we have our hands. It's always tricky because you're holding something, right? And you need to hold that. But you can add like a little bit of squish to it too, especially right when he puts it on his glasses. It's that little extra bit of flair where you can kind of squish the fingers. Okay, I'm going to exaggerate this. Right now you've got both, the fingertip holding the glasses, right? But if you were to kind of squish it down, like he's going to push it, and you'll feel it in your fingers, push it on his face, squish, squish like that, and then you can relax out of it. But it gives you somewhere to go to and somewhere to kind of relax out of. That keeps it kind of organic and a nice sort of like a little polishy detail that you're not necessarily going to see, but you're going to feel it. And that way it won't feel like it's sort of frozen. Because that can happen so many times. We can forget about poses when they just sort of hold and we're just focusing on the bigger action. But when you add those little extra flares, like we do it on things like the toes and stuff, you add a little bit of squash or whatnot, and it just takes your animation to the next level. And I would love to see that on this. Just see that final little polish thing too. Yeah, see, it's great you've got the fingers coming off here. Just watch out for stuff like this finger here. You see how, oops, let's just go back. My pen stopped working there. There we go. See how the finger holds kind of that shape? You do have it opening up, but the whole finger sort of locks off. So in those areas, like you could even video reference yourself just pushing something onto it, like use a pair of glasses. Push it and then let go, and then just see how your finger might flare up, like it might straighten a little bit and then cushion back. Those kinds of things add that really nice extra little, you know, kind of oomph to it. And then, let's see, let's take a look at this guy too. I love that you got this little double blink in there as well. So you know what you can do is when he's coming out of this double blink is add just a little compression with the brows before he comes up and he brightens up. So whenever we are, you know, emoting stuff, it's very difficult to hold our brows completely solid, you know. So we do tend to have those little compressions and those little flares in there. Of course, you don't want something that's super distracting with like that sort of thing happening, but you can add that little bit of compression before you go into a bright eyes or where he's more cognizant of what's going on. So that's some areas that you can take a look at. And let me just take a look here as far as, because there was a few things in here too, I was thinking just as far as polish. Like this, I love this expression. It's awesome. He just, oh, we've all been there, right? I was there today a couple times. So, oh, it's things like this. So when you're looking at like him tipping over like this, you see how his head and his body all tip at the same time? You can go in there and just add that extra little bit of weight. So again, I'm going to exaggerate this. Don't take this, you know, take it with a grain of salt, essentially. But instead of just tipping over like this, is you can add a little bit of that just overlap with the head. It kind of breaks things up a little bit, gives a little bit more weight, and makes it feel a little bit more organic. So you can try stuff like that. And it's the same with shoulders. So if we're ever doing, let's see, so you had some on this guy right in here. Let me just see where I can find that, because I was trying to remember where I found that. Yeah, so even if you have this shoulder, so just remember that if you have a shoulder coming up like that, you don't want to isolate that movement in there and have nothing happen here. So you're probably going to feel something more, you know, in the chest, a little bit more in the chest to kind of emphasize that sort of feeling. And same thing on the head too, is you can add that little bit of, those little bit of overlaps and stuff. If you have a face, which I totally love this. I love that he's got this attitude, you know, and he's focused like that. But look for those opportunities that if he drops down suddenly, you can add that tiny little bit of overlap with your rotate X and even lead a little bit with the rotate Z. So just to get the head to kind of dip a little bit, but engage that neck as well. Again, keep it super subtle, because the whole gag here is that he's got that look and then he goes into this pose. But what we want to avoid is if anything kind of holds on those axes, it can start to feel a little bit more mechanical. So it just helps loosen it up a bit, but subtlety is the key there. So you just want to keep things super, super, super subtle. But yeah, I love all that stuff. I thought that was really, really nice. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful work. Yeah, so even stuff like, let me just, oops, go back over here. So when you watch, my pen here, okay, so you watch that card come up, you see how it comes up like this and the wrist is kind of stiff, is all you have to do is just go in there and just add a little bit. So that's that kind of flare I was talking about. So you might have your hand come up like this, but just add a little bit. Again, I'm exaggerating. If it's like this, to add a little bit of drag like that and then snap up, so you get a little bit of that weight in there. Breaking those kinds of things up just adds that whole extra layer of sort of weight and flair to the animation. And you can find all sorts of places to do it in. So again, my point whenever I do that is I just start going through and I will study, like if I am just staring at this guy's head right here, and I will scrub back and forth and back and forth, and I'll find those areas where I can maybe add a little bit of dip in in the nose, and then I'll go back through the shot and I'll just study his hand, and I will be looking at the fingers and I'll be making sure like nothing's crashing through, that sort of thing. And if I want to add a little bit more drag on the hand, or a little bit of a higher arc faster down, maybe offset those fingers a bit or something like that. And then if I am looking for arcs on those, on that card and stuff like that, snapping coming up. And also if I'm staring at something, so let's say I am studying this folder here and I am scrubbing back and forth and I'm looking for those, you know, add that little extra weight, make sure it doesn't freeze, because we do hit a bit of a wall right in there where we kind of come up and then we stop. But you can add a little bit of life to that. But as I'm looking at that, my peripheral is also looking at the body. So if the body is moving and I get a little bit of that overlap, that connection to, because his hand is holding the folder, so if the body's going to be moving, there's going to be a reaction in the hand, which you're going to see in the folder, right? So I'm staring at the folder, and as I'm polishing that up, I'm also, with my peripheral vision, I'm paying attention to what's happening with the body. So there might be those times where I need to offset that folder, you know, to do a little bit of that kind of feeling, and it doesn't feel like it's locked in space, but the body's doing all this stuff, this movement. So that's what I'll do for looking for polished things. But yeah, you did a wonderful job on this. Really, really nice. So super entertaining, really, really fun. So congratulations again. And that's what I got for you as far as just some suggestions on how you can kind of push a little bit further. But I wish you all the very best. And yeah, fantastic work. All right. Have a great week. Bye-bye.